Sometimes I'm glad we have 45-mile-an-hour speed limits.
How you doing, Dan?
I'm good. Where am I supposed to be?
I think that's your chair.
That's fine.
Good to see you.
Good evening. I'm calling the Monday, August 8th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. First item on the agenda this evening is the approval of the agenda. Do I have any requests for changes or concerns about the agenda this evening? Entertain a motion to approve the agenda. All right, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda this evening is approved. Moving on, we have the minutes from the meeting held on Monday, June 27th, 2022. Do I have any requests for edits to the minutes or concerns about the minutes? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting.
I'll approve the minutes, recommend approval.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Moving on, we have a few public hearings this evening. The first one is Olympic Hills 8th edition. This is a request for a planned unit development concept review on 0.19 acres. Planned unit development amendment with waivers on 0.19 acres and a preliminary plat on 0.19 acres. Will the proponent of the project please come forward? Good evening. If you would, state your name for the record and tell us about your request.
Hello, my name is Brian Field from Anderson Engineering, representing the guys from Olympic Hills. Is there the presentation up, I guess? Jeremy's getting it
Pull
here.
that mic a little closer.
Okay.
I think he's pulling up the presentation for you.
All right, thanks for giving us the opportunity to kind of present our Olympic Hills 8th edition here. Like I said, my name is Brian Field with Anderson Engineering, representing the Olympic Hills guys here. Tell you a little bit about our site, existing conditions. We're located off of Overlook Trail in Prairie here, like Commissioner said. 0.2 acres, zoned RM, 6.5 multifamily, low density residential, and our proposed plat will, follow that 2040 comp plan. Here's just another kind of aerial of the site, giving you approximate area of development. This is currently an Outlot C, platted in the Olympic Hills 2nd edition. Got a couple photos here showing kind of just the perspective of the site. This is looking kind of southeast into kind of the east neighbor there. As you can see, it's kind of a big open field, and just to the right of this is a nice big landscape area. Next slide here. This one's looking north. Like I said, there, as you can see, that big landscape area is kind of located in an extra wide right-of-way area that I'll kind of get to in the next couple slides here. This is a view of kind of the north property line, again, looking east into the neighboring area. This view is looking south, kind of towards Overlook Drive. And again, kind of, as you can see, pretty big lot. For our preliminary plat, we are requesting 2 waivers. The front yard setback, we're requesting a reduction from 30 feet to 20 feet. But we feel that, you know, I think it has an 82-foot right-of-way, kind of, as you can see, where overlook kind of swings down. That the feel of that front yard setback waiver won't be compromised due to that large right-of-way area. Kind of the typical properties in the neighborhood have a right-of-way varying from 12 to 15, so I think we're gonna fit in pretty well. Our second waiver request is the lot depth, 100-foot minimum rear lot depth based on average per the RM 6.5 code. Our north property is 100, our east property line is 90, so again, that average is 95, so pretty close to that 100-foot. And again, that extra right-of-way really gives us the feel of what the code is intending, we think. Here's just kind of a summary of what I just kind of went through with additional, you know, the width being that it's a corner lot. We have, you know, 90 feet, you know, well exceeding the 24-foot minimum. Again, the depth 95 feet average, and the area just over 8,500 square feet, which fits pretty in line with the neighborhood. The building setbacks, meeting all the building setbacks with the exception of that front yard, which I won't go over again. Here's kind of the proposed site. This building pad is showing roughly a 3,500 to 400 square foot residential house. We got a foundation of just over 1,800 with a 3-stall garage. The site grading is excellent for the site. It all drains kind of the southeast. And you can see our proposed grading there. We're kind of deepening the swale along the east lot line, so any water from our lot, not only our lot, but the neighboring lots will be conveyed to the east and south to Overlook Drive. Our water service and sanitary service, we have the benefit of both the existing main lines cut through the right-of-way. We see this as a advantage, not only you know, cost perspective, but also a lessening of neighborhood disturbance, basically. We won't have to go into Overlook Drive to make those connections. And I think that's about it. So I'll throw it back to Jeremy here if you have any questions. And Anderson's here, and also the owner is present as well if you have any questions for us.
Thank you. Any questions initially? If you could stay here just a minute, please. Any initial questions before we go to the city's report? Yeah, Commissioner Meddy.
Is the intent of this property to the golf course to retain ownership, or are they planning on selling this off for someone to build a home?
They can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the intent is to sell it off. Yeah. Right, to sell it off, yeah.
Commissioner Taylor.
How you doing? So is the request for the waiver to go from the 30 feet to 20 feet to keep the landscape area that's in the front of the property, that landscape area there?
Well, so the setback, it just, the 30 feet, how the lot is configured, the 20-foot setback kind of gives us a more conventional building pad, if you will. Yeah, I guess the owner would be, you know, responsible for maintaining that landscape and stuff. Eventual owner.
Just to clarify, including that rock wall area and the stuff outside of the property limits, is this responsibility of the future
Yep.
homeowner?
Yeah, but I
Okay.
mean, it would be just like, you know, a boulevard in front of any other residential house. It's the part of their right of way and they would need to maintain it.
Questions? Thank you. We be doing the city report this evening?
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. As the applicant stated. Oh, thank you. New technology, thank you. As the applicant stated, we are looking, or he is looking to replat the property. It's an outlot C, which we don't allow to be built on, so he's looking to plat it as a buildable lot. The lot is consistent with a comprehensive plan from a use and density standpoint. The lot is consistent with the zoning district in terms of the minimum lot area. He did mention earlier the lot depth requirement from reducing the depth requirement from 100 to 95 feet. And then also the setback, front yard setback waiver, as noted, drops from 30 to 20 feet as proposed. Staff supports the plat as presented. We looked at, in support of the waiver for the front yard setback, for example, we looked at that large right-of-way adjacent to the property as kind of a continuation of the front yard area, so it has the effect of from a bulk standpoint, a large kind of front yard area, even though it's not technically owned by the applicant.
Skip, is it possible to get the mic closer to you?
Apologize. As I said before, the waiver requested from the front yard setback, staff supports in part because of the irregular shape of the right-of-way adjacent to the property. It has the effect of a large front yard setback or a large front yard there. And in terms of the lot depth, staff does support the waiver there because of the unique triangular shape of the lot. It does reduce the amount of buildable area for a new home there. Staff does, as I said before, recommend approval subject to several conditions that are outlined in the staff report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the city right now?
I do have one question.
Commissioner Kirk?
Jeremy, on some of our developments, there's designated open space. In the original PUD, was this land designated as open space, or was it just kind of an outlot there that they were going to use for recreational?
The review of the documents that I looked at just noted that there was going to be a tot lot in the area, and then the final plat showed the tot lot or this outlot C to be used for a tot lot. I didn't see any reference to formal requirement for open space.
Thank you.
Commissioner,
Commissioner Farr?
or Chairman, rather. Just to carry on from Commissioner Kirk's comment, I'm really miffed with this proposal. I'm reading open space into the tot lot as well. And whether or not it's not formalized in the development agreement back in 1976, there was clear intention for a public amenity and public open space for this neighborhood that was ignored. Whether the city caught it or not, as a minimum, I would have expected A, an apology from 46 years ago, B, some compensatory damages paid, park dedication fees or something like that, before even ringing your doorbell. So to have the chutzpah to show up and ask for it to be developed into a profitable lot from what was promised to the city as open space in the neighborhood, I think is a slap in the face. If I was a council member from 1976 and hearing us planning commissioners thinking about reversing a proposal that they had in a contract with the developer back then to turn a public space into a private development, I'd be a little upset. And I can't in good conscience let the applicant off the hook on that matter. And I'm surprised this isn't more of a legal issue.
Mr. Chair, may I respond? Mr. Chair, Mr. Farr. While there's some comments in the documents in the past about the intention of the property, it wasn't a formal requirement. And we took the view, based on this request today, that there's no documented request by the neighborhood for a tot lot or a feature of that nature. And also, currently, we don't generally ask for a lot of tot lots for single-family homes. We do ask for them for attached family developments. But for single-family developments, we don't ask for tot lots, so in that vein, we didn't look to require it here.
Sure, okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I also could continue, there will be a park dedication requirement as part of this plat also.
Sure, triggered by the new development,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, okay. Thank you, appreciate your answer.
Commissioner Meddy.
As a follow-up to that, and I'll comment that, maybe the statute of limitations comes into play on that anyway, but I have a couple questions. One, did the city attorney take a look at this at all and to kind of determine if, any of the comments that Mr. Farr brought up were kind of a factor here?
At this stage, no.
My other question is looking kind of around this neighborhood and actually immediately south of the homes that are just on the south side of Overlook Trail, there's another outlot. And there's a couple more outlots you see kind of snuck in here and there around the golf course. Could any of those theoretically, also be converted into buildable plats? Maybe every outlot has, was created for some reason or another, but it kind of seems like this might open up the can of worms and theoretically allow any of these others to also then be developed.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, yes, that is theoretically possible that an applicant could come forward and replat existing outlots. And in those situations, we would do as we did here, is analyze that based on the applicable development agreements, ordinances in place, comprehensive plan, zoning code. And some of those may not have the necessary street frontage or other issues that may preclude their development. But yes, of course, anyone could come in and apply for that type of request.
One last question for clarity on the history here. Olympic Golf Course is the owner, but they were not the developer. Do you know at what point in time they took ownership of the lot? And then, I guess if we're talking about the lot, who is responsible for building it? My understanding from reading this is it would be the original developer, not Olympic Hills.
I guess my information suggested Olympic Hills or an arm of them was the original developer. But
Okay.
I'd be open to further review of that. But yeah, at the time the developer, at the time of the development, the development agreement is with the original developer and the city. So sometimes that is transferred to a subsequent buyer, but that's where it starts, with the original developer.
Thank you.
Other questions right now? Okay. This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward and speak for or against this project, please step up to the podium. No? Yes, come forward, sir. If you wouldn't mind, please state your name for the record and.
Sure. I'm Jerry Pitzerick. I live at 9322 Overlook Trail, kind of directly across from the round part of the corner there. Our neighborhood has had a lot of discussion about this over the last couple of weeks. And what I'd like to do is just kind of give you a little bit about the past history of this lot and respond to what's being proposed, and then a little bit about the future. Also, Pete, who was seated right next to me, has a petition that's been signed by the vast majority of all of our neighbors that basically says, don't do this. So that's a starting point for you. In 1977, Cal and Connie Dinham, who lived directly across to the west from that lot, and Jim Wicks, who lives adjacent to me, south of the lot, purchased their lots. When they purchased their lots, and they still live there today, it specifically said this was an outlot. They were told it was public space, it would not be developed. When we bought our house in 1985, I'm a civil engineer, so I looked at plats. I want to see exactly what's going on here. And it said, this is an outlot. And my definition of outlots at that time was you don't build on outlots. So that's the experience I personally had. When I talked to my neighbors, most all of them had similar conversations, either by looking at drawings or by talking to the real estate agents, who would typically say, yeah, that's an outlot, that'll be open. They don't build on outlots. That's my experience. So that was the expectation that we've all had for 45 years now, and it's been very consistent. Not once have I ever heard anybody from Olympic Hills or anywhere else until this year talk about building something on that lot. Eden Prairie Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12.40 says, the owner of land being subdivided shall dedicate to the public for public use as playgrounds or public space. This was defined by that ordinance at that time. Per the city planner's report on the questions that I sent to them, they said, in the agreement between the developer and the city, this was a tot lot paid for and maintained by the developer. This responsibility passed on to the current owners, Olympic Hills. That's been our expectation all along, that that Olympic Hills would take responsibility for this land. Now also in the planner's report, it said that Olympic Hills has been maintaining this for the last 45 years. That is summarily wrong. For the 25 or 30 years, our neighborhood took care of that lot completely. Pete and I would mow the front part of it. Paul, there he is. Paul and Cal would mow the part that's described as the lot to build on. We would take turns doing that. We did that for 25 or 30 years. And then our neighbor, Jim Wicks, he was also a participant once in a while in that, but he wasn't up to the physical activity of doing it. And so he hired a landscaping firm, a mowing service to mow his yard, and he started having them mow the lot. And he was also a member of Olympic Hills, and so he talked to Olympic Hills about, can you at least contribute something here to the cost of mowing this lot? And so what Jim told me today is he remembered that they paid maybe $30 or $40 per time when the lot was being mowed by his lawn service. That took place till about 3 years ago. Then Jim, because of some physical issues, had to stop playing golf and dropped his membership at Olympic Hills. When he was no longer a member at Olympic Hills, there was no longer any interest in them participating with anybody on maintaining the lot. That was a good way to keep a good member who was paying lots of money, and when he was not paying any money, they had no interest in continuing the relationship. That's been our experience. So 3 years ago, some of us would occasionally mow the lot, and we saw nobody from Olympic Hills. We started to call the city and issue complaints because Olympic Hills didn't really respond when we would call them. They would say, yeah, we'll get to it, or nobody would respond at all. And so one time we filed a formal complaint with the city that it was an overgrown lot. The process you go through with the city is once you make the formal complaint, they send somebody out to see if your complaint is accurate. Once they do that, then they give the landowner 3 weeks' time to respond to the complaint. If they don't respond in 3 weeks' time, then the city schedules their person to go out and their independent contractor to go out and mow the lot. That takes another 2 weeks. So basically, as a community member, we sit there for 5 weeks waiting for somebody to take care of something that they are responsible for taking care of on a regular basis. It didn't happen. All that changed, though, this year. 3 months ago, I called Rudy Luther, and he said, yeah, we'll take care of it. We had some problems the last couple of years. That we had problems with our workforce. We weren't able to get a number of workers like we have in the past, and so that was an issue for us. But now we're taking care of it, and they have done a very good job for the last 3 months. They would mow the yard once a week, generally, but they didn't do anything with the landscaping out in front. Now, as I look at this, I thought, what's the burden that Olympic Hills has here? Why do they want to get rid of this? How is it costing them money? So first I looked at the tax rolls, tax reports. How much property tax do they pay on this? 0. So I looked then, how much maybe is it incorporated into their property tax bill for the whole country club? Well, the club has 6 different parcels, and when you look at all those parcels, it adds up to 130 acres, and their property tax is $107,000 this year. That's what they will pay. Our little community on Overlook Trail is 15 acres. We will pay $174,000 in taxes this year. So we pay 60% more taxes to support Hennepin County, to support our city, to support our schools than Olympic Hills does. Interesting, isn't it? When you talk about maintenance and the burden of maintaining this, on the material we received, it said that this proposed lot is 0.19 acres. When you compare that to the 130 acres that Olympic Hills maintains fabulously on their golf course, it's a beautiful golf course. We love having a house that looks at it. But when you compare that 0.19 acres to 130 acres, that is 15/100ths of 1% compared to their 150 acres. So, was that burdensome? It's hard to think of that as burdensome. You apply that to the gas price. Right now, gasoline, $4 a gallon, 15/100ths of a percent increase in gas price, that'd be $4.00 of 1 penny. So that's the just terrible burden that they have to live with in maintaining the lot. So the other thing I looked at is, maybe it's difficult for them because it's so far away from their maintenance facility. Well, when I looked at Google Maps is really wonderful for this. Their number 6 tee box is 50% further away from their maintenance facility than this outlot. So they're able to get to number 6 tee box all the time. Not a problem. I think they can get to our outlot just as well. So as I went through all this, I was really quite surprised by the arrogance of Olympic Hills to even come to us with this thought, just like Commissioner Farr. And I was also surprised that in the city's report, they just abandoned this concept of the commitment that they made to our community. Why did that happen? I don't understand that. So, looking specifically at the proposal, when you look at the single-family lots that are on our street, all of them are 25% or more larger than this proposed lot. So what the consultant said, about it being similar in size, it's not. It's dramatically smaller than any other lot that any of the single-family lots are on. On the drawing on page 20, let's see, that's back 2 or 1 after that, before that. The front yard setback. That's actually decreasing the setback requirement by 1/3. Where I live, the setback exposes or goes in front of our yard by a significant difference, by a significant amount, similar to, not as much as this, but by much more than the regular street line. And then our setback from that easement area is actually 50 feet before you get to our house. So it's amazing how when the people were originally planning this whole development, they were able to work through those kinds of issues because it was part of the original plan for all the houses, and this lot was not planned for a house. The drawing shows encroachment on the backyard setback. That drawing right there, if you scale from the property line to the house to the east, it shows that that is 16 feet. If you use that scale and go from the property line to the back of the house that they're showing right now, that's 18 feet. That's not 20 feet. If you're looking at that particular house and you think about Pete and Lisa's house to the east, this is going to be 35 feet away from their house that has bedroom windows facing directly at that house. The back of that house will be looking into their house. It's 35 feet away. Just by coincidence, that wall to that wall is about 35 feet. How would you like to have a property that was supposed to be a blank property now all of a sudden have a house on it that's higher in elevation than your house, looking down at your bedroom windows? Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Also, they have a really nice patio and four-season porch back there behind their house. Again, people look down at that all the time. If any of you have any concerns about that or any questions about that, I'm sure Pete and Lisa would have you over and give you a beer, and you can sit on the patio and you can experience that. See exactly what it's like now, and then think about what that would be like when there's a house there. 35, 34, 33, 32 feet away. Who knows? So, moving on to the grading plan. Like I said, I'm an engineer. When you look at that grading plan to the back side of the house and you see those contours, the distance between those contours is 1 foot. The spacing of the contours, when you use that scale that I mentioned, is 5 feet or less. So, when you think about a nice patio, it has a slope of 1/4 inch per foot. This has a drop of 1 foot in 5 feet. What they are proposing isn't a gently graded site to move the water down. They're proposing having a ditch. Just think about that. And that'll be adjacent to Pete and Lisa's house. You know, it's interesting that what they did is they drew the contours so that they wouldn't disrupt the neighboring properties. And that's why they had to be so focused on their approach to doing this. Also, I'd be suspicious as to what they did to deal with the water running off the house to the north, because downspouts come off of their roofs and go onto the outlot right now, which is what makes the most sense for their particular properties. But that wouldn't be especially good with this situation if somebody builds a house there. I'm just wondering too, with this particular grading plan, what did the engineer plan for? Did they plan for a 100-year storm event? Or did they plan for something less? Or what does this really accommodate? Because when you look at the northeast corner, you know, water, when it goes downhill, it likes to go in a straight line. They're showing that water all of a sudden deciding to turn and go south. They don't show any way for it to do that. It's just going to want to do that because that's the way they've drawn an arrow on that drawing. The contour lines don't really define that. Just the arrow does. So I hope the water's listening. The other issue that's brought up is traffic at the corner. And I believe City Engineer Mr. Rue has commented in the report here that there are plans to look at improving that lot. And that's really needed because right now, those of us who live in the community, with the landscaping that's right at that corner, as we approach the corner, we look across the empty lot to see if there's traffic coming from the other direction. Otherwise, what you're dealing with is a blind corner, and as you come around that corner, it's easy to have people run into you. We have a mailbox right around that corner. It's been hit multiple times. Because it was hit multiple times and had to be replaced, our mailbox is now anchored with a 4x4 steel post set in several cubic feet of concrete. A couple times a year, I pick up plastic body parts from cars that have run into it. So it's one way to deal with it. But I'm looking forward to Rod taking care of this for us in the future. And when he does take care of it, what that is going to entail is getting rid of this 260-degree corner to make a 90-degree turn. That's what the answer really is, isn't it, Rod? Yeah, it is. Engineers understand each other and that kind of crap. So, all of this information about this huge easement really contributing to the size of the lot, when the road is made safe, a lot of that's going to go away. And it needs to be done because when this was designed 45 years ago, the traffic flow through our area was just residents and a garbage truck once a week. Now we have 2 or 3 garbage trucks coming through every week and multiple carriers. We have Amazon Prime. Our neighborhood must love Amazon Prime. We're not with them, but they're on our street every day, if not more than once a day. FedEx is there, UPS is there, pizza deliveries there. Grocery store deliveries are there. All kinds of people who aren't familiar with our street are constantly driving through, and they're not driving through just with cars and vans. They're driving through with larger vehicles that pose a more significant safety issue. So building a house there restricts the sight line. If that's restricted, the road has to be changed immediately. If you don't build a house there, the road can take a little bit longer time. But you know, there's one good thing about revising the road. The cost to revise the road will probably be less than what the city had to pay about 5 years ago because the original developer didn't construct the road correctly. Yeah, Rod's smiling, right. Yeah. It was a simple mill and overlay job. You mill the asphalt up and then you put down new asphalt. Well, what happened when they milled the asphalt up, it was straight on top of clay. That's not the right way to build a road. The city had to go through and pay for digging out about a foot of the clay and replacing it with class 5 or class 6 material, and then repaving it. I would guess that probably cost the city a couple $100,000, Ron? Yeah, probably so. So the developer already got in your pockets for a couple $100,000. What we can look forward to into the future is if they took the same shortcuts when they put the sanitary sewer and water lines through there, we can look forward to similar problems to St. Louis Park in about 25 or 30 years. Because expansive clays move, and if they get water in them, over time, the sewer line, the water lines will be moving, and there'll be another problem. So, just something to watch, look forward to. So anyway, kind of looking to the future. Everyone that I talk to in our neighborhood says, no house. Some say it'd be great to have a tot lot. Some say, let's just leave it as an open lot. But everyone says, you know, we'll accept either outcome, just no house. That's what we've been told for 45 years. That's what we've helped happen, is that there's a maintained lot there. We've done more of the maintenance than Olympic Hills ever has. So, do that. We'd like a commitment from the city and from Olympic Hills for consistent maintenance of the lot, that they mow the lot on a regular basis and that they maintain that major planting bed. That planting bed has been there for over 40 years. The only maintenance that's been done there has been by our community, and Jim Wicks actually replaced one of the trees there. Spent $500 because a tree died. Olympic Hills doesn't show up at all for maintaining that landscaped area. So please take care of that. The last comment and request is to you, the Planning Commission. We would request that you have a unanimous vote against this. That there's a clear message to the developer that this is not acceptable. That they made commitments to us 45 years ago. People in our community have relied on this for a very, very long time. We expect them to continue on with that commitment. We've been able to show that there is really no hardship to them. There's no cost to them. Maintenance to them is almost non-existent. They should just take care of it and be good neighbors. And finally, if you're not ready to have a unanimous vote, before you close out the public hearing, make sure you'd open it up to the people back here, because there's a lot of heartfelt feelings about what's being considered here. And make sure that you hear from all of them. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We open up all our public hearings to anyone who would like to speak, so that's our normal process.
Good.
Jeremy, can we pull down the PowerPoint, maybe put the video on so people at home can see you speaking? Would someone else like to come up and? Just once he gets the video up so people at home can see who's speaking, please.
Is it Mickey Mouse?
Huh?
The video?
No, I'm not sure.
Pete Schuler, 9335 Overlook Trail. I own the property immediately to the east of the proposed fiasco. This is a copy of the petition I went around, if you would like it
Yep, you can
or
set it.
not.
Yeah, just set it up there, it's fine.
Jerry eloquently put most of what I've got, but the petition had 26 opposed to rezoning to allow building. One person would not sign. Just as a side note, they were afraid of retaliation from the golf course. 5 people were not home or not available, maybe on vacation, and we had 1 house vacant. So that was the standing. The reason all of those, whenever I knocked on a door and talked to the people, it wasn't a, hey, sign this, I'm out the door. I talked to them for at least 10 minutes a stop, if not more. And Jerry hit most of the high points of that. Their big concern was loss of green space, loss of trees, which I, based on the report I read, said we were gonna take down 1 significant tree for this construction project. I guess that depends on what your definition of significant is. It definitely is gonna take more than 1 tree down. But it's a play area for the kids. The neighborhood is going through a transition. I bought in 1993, my kids played in that lot with neighbor kids. Then we went through a transition where we had hardly any children in the neighborhood. Now we've got families. We've got a family of 4. We've got a family of 2 next door to me with 1 pregnant. There's a family with 5 kids right down the street. Actually, that plays into one of the big concerns from the people on the end of the cul-de-sac is the safety that Jerry brought up with that curve. What Jerry did not mention is that that driveway is going to be right below the crest of a hill from the people coming to the south. So it creates even a more of a traffic hazard right there. They're worried about the safety, the sight line and the safety. School bus kids walk right by my house. They cut through that lot. It's a safe way for them to walk. Build a house there. They are now going to walk that curve that already people have a hard time negotiating. So the loss of green spaces was probably the biggest item. From a personal standpoint, Jerry's correct. I would be happy to have anybody over for coffee, a beer, a Coke, whatever, and sit on my patio and take a look at what I'm going to be looking at. I've been a plumber for 35 years. I was in home inspection business for real estate home inspections for 2. Back into plumbing now, you don't need all that. But in that time, I never, ever once, not even in a townhouse situation, saw what I'm gonna be looking at out my backyard. When I purchased the property, we did an investigation on it. The lot wasn't gonna be built on ever. In the meantime, I put an addition on the house, dump a bunch of money into the house. I may have not bought the property in the first place. I never, ever would have improved the property had I known this was gonna come. Because I'm gonna be staring at a back window at a house, and that house is gonna be just hanging right over my patio and my porch. So I'm here to pull on your heartstrings a little bit and go, it does affect it. My suggestion is, if you're not gonna make a decision tonight, we'd overwhelmingly, everybody here is going to agree with me, we're against it. If you don't decide tonight, you should go drive that road. If you have not been on Overlook Trail, you should go drive that road. Stop and knock on my door. If my wife or I are home, you can come sit on our patio and see what we're going to see. Take a walk through that lot because it's a place for the kids to play. And I was looking forward to playing with my new granddaughter there, but I guess that's in your hands. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Would anyone else like to come forward? Good evening. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Ted Folstad. I live on 9285 Overlook. My question, we moved onto Overlook Trail 17 years ago. I realized right off the bat this was really an awkward corner, and me being an engineer, I've wondered for 17 years why in the hell this corner was ever built like that, because it didn't make any sense. As I was researching for this meeting or these meetings, I came across the section map that's on file with Hennepin County right now, and the road is completely different than what was built at the time. My question as an engineer, I gotta believe what's on the section map at Hennepin County is the approved design for that corner. How did that ever get built the way that it's built now when it goes completely against the design on file? Any idea how that happened?
We're going to gather all the public comments and
Okay,
we'll
okay.
have a few questions for Mr. Rue, I
I
think.
mean, I know
so.
if I built a deck that varied substantially from what I had approved, I'd have to correct the deck. So my concern has always been a safety issue. I realized early on, as I said, that this was an awkward corner. Been very careful navigating that corner for 17 years. Now there's more kids on the street again. Got to go around that corner to get to the bus stop. I think it's a safety hazard. And I think regardless of what happens, as Jerry mentioned, the street really needs to be repaired because it is a safety issue. Okay?
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening.
If you would state your name for the record, please.
Evan Platzky. I'm 9337 Overlook Trail. Pete's my neighbor. I'm on the corner of the street. So when you enter Overlook Trail, you drive past my house. Everything is downhill to my house. I'm the last line of defense for the water. It runs, my sump pump runs all the time. We've been lucky enough not to have water in my basement, and so through inspections and planning, we've been able to put an addition down there and expand some of that space. I'm worried that if we pump more water down my way and make, more water is not a good thing for me, my family, or my finances, essentially. So that's my biggest complaint. The safety issue and my kids playing in that lot is also a large complaint or worry for me. We walk almost every day, at least probably 4 times a week, and we go right through that lot. Me and my little girl for sure. Emmett sometimes rides his bike around that hazardous corner, which is always, it's always a concern because they're right about the safety issue of that corner. So that being said, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else like to come forward? Good evening.
Hi.
If you'd state your name, please, for the record.
I'm Judy Folstad, and I live at 9285 Overlook Trail. One of the other safety issues there is that there isn't a lot of parking. Pardon me?
Just pull the mic down just a touch.
A little bit?
Yeah, thanks.
Too short. Anyway, there isn't a lot of off-street parking there, just our driveways, so there are always cars parked, especially at that corner, which makes it even less safe. And I guess that's not the fault of the Olympic Hills group, but like Ted said, we've lived there for 17 years, and just sometimes even getting through that street because you have cars parked on both sides of the street, it can be a problem. So just for what it's worth, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi.
If you would state your name, please.
Hi, my name's Catherine Cinco, and we live at 9265 Overlook Trail. And I was addressing the same issue that she had with the street coming around the corner, cars parked on both sides. If you build this tiny little house on this lot, people come around the corner. That easement, when they fix that road, that house is not going to be a 20-foot, which is supposed to be 30-foot. It's going to be less than that because they're going to take some more of the road into the lot, and it's going to be even worse. So you have to look at what's going to happen in the future. That house would really not meet the criteria that you have in this plan. So they should really look at the future plan for the road before they agree to anything. Okay?
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Bill Cole, 9295 Overlook Trail. My wife Lori and I have lived there for about 5 years. I really don't have anything new to add to what's already been said. I just wanted to go on the record as opposing this proposed development. When we purchased the property, we understood that that lot would not be developed, and that factored into our decision to purchase the property. I value green space very much. It's an amenity to the whole neighborhood, and I also have safety concerns on that corner as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else, would you like to come forward? Good evening. Just state your name, please.
Andrea Platzky. I also live at 9337 Overlook Trail. My husband already talked. We have one on the way. We use that lot daily for the kids. My neighbor that lives adjacent to us, his kids use that. And I just think, just like everyone else has said, it's just a safety concern. And that was one of the reasons that we purchased the house, was an open, nice lot that our kids could entertain themselves in. And the road is really busy. Franlow is really busy. There's not really a whole lot of space for us to safely have my 4- and 2-year-old be walking, and so we always do go up the street. So that is one of the major reasons why they use that area to play.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Anna Grossbach. I live at 9330 Overlook Trail, and I'm a newer member to our community. I moved in 2019. Of course, was told that this space is for a tot lot. It was going to be open. I've really loved living in the neighborhood. There are a lot of really established people. Everything that has been said, I can't second, and I'm really impressed that everybody knows about it. So just want to state that it is really important to have open space, and that is on the record. So thanks for considering this and being able to share. So.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Dave Grambling. I live at 9210 Overlook Trail. I've been there since 1989. If I heard correctly, Jerry, they have not paid a single tax dollar on that land. Is that correct?
That's correct, 0.
Okay, so for 45 years, that land has sat there and has been what it's been. It has not cost Olympic Hills Golf Club anything. All of a sudden, they have to have a house built and be sold for profit when there really isn't a need from the corporate standpoint. Olympic Hills is a private club. They limit their membership purposely to a low number so that they maintain their excellence and their appearance in the public as being one of the top private courses in the state. The Luthers own, I believe, other golf courses in Arizona. And they really have no need to build and sell a house on that lot that hasn't cost them anything in 45 years. And so from that position, I think it would be in the best interest of the neighborhood and the city to decline the approval of any code or whatever variance they're asking for to build on that property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Good evening. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Locascio. I've been the controller at Olympic Hills Golf Club since 2017. So I just wanted to, as far as my knowledge on this goes, as I said, I've been working with the club since 2017. The club came under new ownership in the early 2000s. I forget the exact year, but I think it was between 02 and 05. And as far as the care of the lot, since I got there in 2017, we were paying Mr. Wicks for what we thought was the full cost of the care of the property. And then we took it over after him after he resigned from the club, and he said that he wasn't no longer going to have a lawn care service to take care of the lot, so we said we would take care of that responsibility. Thank you.
Brian Field with Anderson. Just want to clarify a couple things on the plan. What this gentleman over here was looking at is not a scalable rendering of the plan, so the scale is actually off. We are meeting the setbacks. The drainage swales are, within industry standard. So I just wanted to speak to that, and thanks.
Once the public hearing closes, we may have more questions for you too. So. Good evening. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Rudy Luther. I'm the general manager at the club. So just wanted to give a little background on how we got to this point. So we were paying Jim to take care of the lot. When I came on board, we kind of looked at it and said, hey, this is a nice piece of property in the area. How can we add another single family home? It wasn't like we're not Big Bad Wolf. A lot of these people live on the golf course that we have put in, a massive amount of capital into to, try and improve it. We did that community, when we did do the golf course redesign, we took a storm sewer and redid it, which cost about $250,000 to $300,000. That wasn't required. It was just to help the community. So just a lot of the things that they're talking about that kind of paint us in this bad light. Like, we're trying to be great neighbors. We just saw this as an opportunity. Hey, it's an unused piece of land. It's sitting there. So, how can we, add to it? We talked to the city planning. We talked to an engineer. Everybody was like, this makes total sense. So I think just with some of the public comments, we're trying to be good neighbors. We just saw this as, an opportunity to add to the community further, and just hope everybody gets that standpoint from where we're coming from. So.
Thank you.
Could I ask Mr. Luther a question?
No.
I thought so.
You can ask him after the meeting if you'd like to.
Okay.
Would anyone else like to come forward? Last call.
I'm Judy Folstad again. I guess I have one question. If this were going on in your neighborhood, would you like it?
You can ask us. If you
Oh,
want to
I'm
ask
sorry.
him outside, you're welcome to ask him
Okay,
outside.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Would any of you like it in your yard? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no other people coming forward, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing and have further discussion.
Move to close the public hearing?
I have a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Multiple seconds. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 Opposed? Public hearing's closed. Further discussion. Yeah, Commissioner Meddy, you want to start?
I'll try to keep this short. I think there's a lot of things we could debate here. Where I'm standing on this is one, I do feel for the neighbors, if this were me, where if there was, I bought a house with an outlot next to it, that can't or shouldn't supposed to be developable, I'd be upset that something could be. However, I also stand with the rights of a property owner. If it's in there, if this is actually in someone's right, if you own an outlot and you can just change it into not an outlot and sell it, okay. But I think where I stand on this is I'm questioning the legality of it. I think we should have our city attorney review this. I think that the homeowners probably do have a claim that this theoretically couldn't be developed since it was supposed to have been developed as a tot lot. Because of those reasons, I'm going to vote against it.
Commissioner Marcos?
I'll just add a couple things. One, I think it's interesting when we continue to see developments popping up, we always see the outlots and the city's going to take control of them. It's always, we continuously see that, and I keep thinking, wow, the city's really taking on a lot. But it really makes sense in this exact situation of why developments give outlots to the city, because then the city can help determine and control what's happening for the citizens of that development. I'm sure things were different at that time, but it's curious to me why they didn't give out the outlots to the city and why they've been holding on to them, and also why these other small little outlots are owned still by the golf course in that space. It's a very strange thing in that neighborhood, I would imagine, for the people that live there. So I don't know if the city can comment on that at all, if that's something that we've encouraged as we continue to do more developments by giving the city the ownership essentially of outlots. And then my other question, I guess, for the city is, do we have plans for that road? Is that something that's up and coming and has been discussed? And should that be thought about before we assume that this extra space is staying and would be considered part of that okay extension of the right-of-way?
Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, yes, Chair. I'll take the first one and then I'll let Rod handle the second one. I don't know the answer to the question of why we didn't accept or collect an outlot back in 1976. I think that's a process change has occurred over time for this reason, that we have some control over what our property is and what it can be used for.
Sorry, Commission members of the commission, I'll add to that a little bit. This is not unique in our city. There are other developments that have come through that have been an outlot and been for recreational purposes, but then never, for whatever reason, had the trail put in or the tot lot put in. So this is not unique. But as been mentioned lately, is recently it's been the city's idea that now those are dedicated or deeded or conveyed, whatever method, to the city to ensure those. A lot of these outlots, because they are deemed as recreation, they are tax exempt. Sometimes there'll be diseased trees or something else that then something gets assessed to it, it goes tax forfeit, and then gives adjacent property owners the option to purchase it or do whatever. But this is not a unique thing with the city. It happened quite a bit kind of in the 70s, and I can think of a couple of really large developments that maybe a lot of promises were made and that was never followed through for whatever reason.
Commissioner Taylor.
Well, the one thing I'd like to say is listening to the history of the outlot and the community stepping up to take care of the outlot. I'm interested in hearing from the developers from Olympic Hills. Where have you been for the 20 years or so plus that the community kind of stepped up and took care of this property, and then all of a sudden, if I heard the comment right, you, as the new general manager, you just happened to be over there one day and saw this property and said, hey, this would be maybe a great addition to add a home. I'd like to just hear more feedback from the developers on kind of where have you been for that 20 years. And then, this idea, so if it's not for residential, what was plan B or C that you thought of that you could turn this lot into to be more favorable for the community?
Mr. Chairman? Is it?
Oh, no.
Are you gonna?
I was gonna. Yes, thank you. I was gonna address.
That's fine.
Commissioner Taylor.
So yeah, since I've been involved, we had a member that was located next to it, so we thought we were paying and taking care of it. I was not involved prior to that point, so I don't know if it had just evolved into kind of community maintained lot, but nothing got brought to my attention as far as not maintaining it. When it has come to my attention, I've sent my grounds crew out there, tried to be good neighbors. It is off the property, so it's kind of tough to get to, and especially with the COVID shortages and everything that we've had with labor, it's been interesting, but we've tried to do our best. We just saw of it as, hey, this is, it might not been not getting maintained to their standards. We want to maintain it to their standards. Let's get a homeowner in there that's gonna, add to the community, take care of it, take care of that, front slot too, and just continue to, yeah, kind of add to the community and make sure it's taken care of, so.
Thank you. I'm actually going to go to Rod first because Commissioner Marcos was asking about future plans for the road. Maybe you could address that, and then to Commissioner Kirk, if that's okay.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I really don't know why the road was built the way it is. It was obviously built that way in '76 when it was built. From looking at the plat, it's always been kind of a curious question, I guess, but the way it's platted, it appears like it was supposed to be a curve with an eyebrow, potentially a little small cul-de-sac or eyebrow cul-de-sac to the south and kind of west there. As far as the concerns that we heard tonight or regarding the safety of that curve, that had not come to our attention till tonight. As was mentioned earlier, we just redid this road a couple of years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago. And I don't think, at least from a feasibility standpoint, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to go in there and redo the road that we just did unless there's a safety concern that the residents really want us to correct. We can certainly look at that, but just the fact that we just rebuilt that street and hadn't heard this issue before can be looked at, but I would guess we would request some type of petition or request from the neighborhood to do that, and we would plan ahead and look at that in years ahead.
Commissioner Kirk.
Mr. Chairman, just my thoughts on this. I think that the most troubling thing that I have on this is it's very clear that the expectation of the homeowners was that this wouldn't be developed. And I think that's a fair expectation in the sense that an outlot, in my mind, by definition, is an area that's not going to be developed. My neighborhood was developed in a little before this, but in that same general time frame. And when we moved into the neighborhood, there are all these plans for boat docks on Red Rock Lake and all of this stuff and recreational areas. And the only recreational stuff that went in was some neighbors built a sand volleyball court. And ultimately, the land, at least to my knowledge, and Matt could probably correct me on this, but to my knowledge, was forfeited to the city for taxes. And it was quite an extensive outlot area. Matt's familiar with it because the city just took care of some trees in the outlot, which was very happy to the neighborhood. But there was never a discussion of that land being developed. It was an outlot, and if we didn't own it as a homeowners association, the city owned it. And it turned into parks, which turned out to be a great move in our neighborhood. So that clear expectation of an outlot not being developed, and it was clearly communicated to the neighborhood and over multiple years. I heard from 25 years ago up until 3 years ago that expectation was communicated. So it's troubling to then all of a sudden come up and just kind of snap our fingers and say, well, we're going to develop it now. So that, and just the idea of open space. I think, Eden Prairie is famous for its open space, and I think that's the thing. And lastly, one reason the Planning Commission exists is to have meetings like this and to hear the neighborhood feedback. And wow, I'm not sure I've heard such a unanimity of a neighborhood feedback in many, many years. So I think as commissioners, we are obligated to listen very carefully to that. So my position right now is today I couldn't vote for this going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Kirk. Commissioner Gooding, I think you're.
It comes before us because they need waivers to build. Otherwise, it wouldn't come before the Planning Commission. And that waiver request, in my mind, is a balancing of neighborhood issues and the builder or the owner's right to build on their property. And the scale in my mind is leaning to not go there. I think the homeowners have made valid reasons why this Planning Commission should not really look to recommend those waivers. It doesn't look like it's a good fit. If they could put the house on the property without the waivers, they wouldn't be before us. And I cannot see in my mind voting to approve it.
Thank you, Commissioner Gooding.
Mr. Chair?
Yep, Commissioner Fart.
I've spoken my heart already. This simply doesn't pass the sniff test in my mind. It lacks positive findings to support approval. There's been no attempt to apologize or make amends for the failure to perform in accordance with their original development obligations. We're an advisory board to the city council, but if I was to dispense any advice to the applicant, I would say to try and mend fences with the neighborhood and meet with them and offer to pay for some public improvement amenity at that corner that would be satisfactory for them as generations roll. This has been a 46-year problem. Maybe those are different improvements over time, but I'm very disappointed at this proposal coming forth and having us spend our time on this.
Point of clarification, is my understanding correct that there is no buyer for this home? It's built on speculation at this point?
Yeah, the proponent's nodding yes.
There is no buyer.
Land for sale, it's not even designed yet.
Anyone else like to?
I just want to follow up, I guess, and reiterate my request to really understand, and this can be some follow-up or whatever, but I think Commissioner Gooding made a good point that hit me, that if they didn't need waivers, could this have just got approved without needing to go through Planning Commission? And again, I'm going back to the broader legal question as to, can all outlots that are privately owned anywhere in the city just be converted into not an outlot and then potentially sold for redevelopment? That is kind of my really big overarching question, because I think that's a big concern, and obviously understand why the city is now pushing for, everything going forward. They're taking ownership of the outlots, but I'm really curious if that truly is a fact, and if they didn't need waivers, would they be able to just do this?
I strongly support exactly what Commissioner Meddy just said. I think we need to have a very clear understanding of what does an outlot mean, not only when the development's going forward, but in the future. Because I thought it was clear, and it evidently isn't.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think generally it is clear that an outlot establishes the use for that property. That doesn't mean it can't change in the future, and I think that's the question we have here. Also, when outlots are established, they are often established for a specific purpose, and depending on how they were created, whether it's development agreement, easement, or what have you, they may influence the future changes or uses of that property. So every situation is a little bit different and does require its own research. So I can't give you a blanket response there, but in this situation, we didn't find that history that suggested it could not be changed.
So just informal poll, is anyone on the commission in favor of this moving forward as is? Certainly not a majority. Okay, then my next question is, what do the commissioners feel about not recommending approval to city council, or do we want to send it back for legal to review or have more understanding of an outlot?
Process question, if I made a motion to recommend denial and we all then approved the denial motion, does it still go to city council?
Yes.
Yes.
It could.
So no matter what our motion
with
is,
the-
it's gonna go to city council. Okay.
Unless we sent it back for more information.
I think we should just go ahead with a motion.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, I will make the motion. I move to recommend denial, so voting yes means you're voting against this. I move to recommend denial of, hang on, I'm not reading right. Approval for a PUD concept review. I'm sorry, move to deny the PUD concept review on 0.19 acres, PUD amendment on 0.19 acres, and a preliminary plat on 0.19 acres based on plans dated July 22nd, 2022, and the staff report dated August 8th, 2022.
I have a motion to recommend denial from Commissioner Meddy. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second for Commissioner Farr. All those in favor of recommending denial, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Would anyone like to abstain? We're recommending denial to City Council. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Moving on this evening, we have another public.
Hold their proposal. It doesn't have to go to.
Hey, please be respectful inside, please. Thank you. We have another public hearing, code amendment for building materials. And Jeremy, will you take us through this?
Yes, thank you, Chair, Commissioners. Staff is proposing a code amendment that relates to building materials. The code amendment speaks to really three areas of building code standards. As you know, a couple years ago, we added fiber cement panels or fiber cement siding as allowable use on attached residential projects. What this code amendment is proposed to do is establish kind of the maximum amount for that. So what we're saying is there's a number of class 1 materials that are allowed, fiber cement panels being one of those, or excuse me, fiber cement siding being one of those. We're just saying that fiber cement can't be the most prominent class 1 material. So in situations where there's brick and stone and glass, fiber cement can't be the most, the highest percentage of material for those situations. The other kind of relatively minor changes are where the current design guidelines, or excuse me, the current code says that painted brick is prohibited. We're removing that prohibition. There were some concerns earlier that painted brick would not stand up from a performance standpoint, start to peel or what have you. And we're not seeing that in other communities, so we're opening painted brick as an option. And then there was some clarification necessary in terms of what class 1 materials were allowed in single-story buildings. You recall that in most of our zoning district, class 1 materials are required 75% of all building facades, and there's some question of how did that apply for single-story buildings? Because if you read some sections of the code, it could imply that you could only use class 1 materials on the base level of a single-story building, so all of the building had to be class 1, and we're trying to clarify that a little bit from the confusion standpoint. We don't see this as any policy change. We're just trying to clarify, with the exception of the painted brick, we're just trying to clarify the goals of the city in terms of this amendment. I should point out that when you see a project as a planning commission, there's several iterations of the elevations, in part because of the confusion regarding the amount of class 1 materials. So we're trying to clarify that a little bit so that you get to it a little quicker and it's less confusion or less costly for the developer as they redo plans. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions for the city regarding this amendment? No. This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward and speak for or against the amendment, please do so now. Not seeing anyone. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion is second. All those in favor of close the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing's closed. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Farr.
I've looked at these technical changes and support them all. I'd like to make a minor, I don't know if it's typographical error correction or just in terms of phrasing. On page 3 of 4, Jeremy, there's a listing of some of the exterior materials that the city uses, and it's a repeat of the language that was in the prior ordinance, but there's this acronym called EIFS, we call it, and the E is for exterior, and in the zoning code it's typed as external, and so just to let you know, it's really called exterior insulation and finish system. And we might as well make that correction and update to the zoning ordinance at the same time, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments? I'd entertain a motion with that minor amendment.
Mr. Chairman, move to recommend approval of an amendment to the City Code, Chapter 11, related to exterior building materials as provided as part of the staff report dated August 8th, 2022, reflecting the minor change discussed.
Motion from Commissioner Kirk. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the amendment passes. Jeremy would take us through the second public hearing is for code amendment for signs, or the third public hearing, I guess.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. This is a purely housekeeping issue. When the city adjusted its sign code last December, I believe it was, to make all sign regulations content neutral, we inadvertently deleted the signage regulations related to directional signs. That was not the intent. We try to keep things consistent. We just changed the names of the terms. So what we're proposing is to replace that regulation, but call it incidental signs. And the intent here is to provide some direction within a site, not pull people off the public road or private road, to provide some direction internally. And so we're proposing replacing the language there. In addition, we also wanted to clarify the size requirements. While that wasn't in the original code, we felt it was appropriate to add size limitations to provide some guidance to the sign community. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any initial questions for the city about this amendment? All right. This is a public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak for or against this amendment, please come forward now. Not seeing anyone, I'd entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing.
All right. Motion from Commissioner Taylor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Commissioner Gooding. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. Any further discussion, or would someone like to make a motion on this one?
Straightforward. I will move to recommend approval of an amendment to City Code Chapter 11 relating to incidental and other corrective language as presented as part of the staff report dated August 8th, 2022.
All right, a motion from Commissioner Meddy. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Marcos. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Would anyone like to abstain? All right, and our final public hearing this evening, code amendment for stormwater management. Jeremy, will you take us through this one as well?
Sure. Staff is recommending some changes to their stormwater management regulations to reflect requirements from our city's NPDES and MS4 permits. Many of these changes that you'll see outlined in your packet there are mandated as part of our construction stormwater permit, so you're not seeing a lot of change in practice or policy, but more codifying our practice. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but we see this as really a housekeeping issue to be in line with our MS4 and NPDES permits.
All right. Any initial questions for the city? Or questions at all, I guess?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Commissioner Fart.
Sure. I certainly support housekeeping like this, and it's a very important part of our zoning code. As a daily consumer of municipal zoning codes, I just wanted to get on my soapbox. I may have said this in previous years. We see no reason, very few reasons most times to have separation of content between different cities' ordinances. And stormwater management and land alteration is not an exception to that dream that we have to have uniform zoning codes throughout the state, if possible. And I know there are some codes that are available that cities can adopt that do that. But anything we can do to allow and provide uniform code writing in format and content from city to city will help our design community. And I know we have some jurisdictional overlays that are difficult to wrangle with watershed districts. In this particular case, some watershed districts have different rules than others, and so those do affect our city ordinances. But in this case with the MPCA and other state regulations that have so much to say about land alteration and stormwater management, I trust that the city will do whatever they can to make zoning ordinance changes to be consistent with other surrounding communities in the state at large. Thank you.
Other comments? All right, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward to speak for or against some amendment, please do so now. Not seeing anyone, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right, motion from Commissioner Gooding. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Sherwood. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Would anyone like to abstain? All right. Congratulations, Jeremy. Your amendments have passed. Do you have a planner's report this evening?
No, it's
Oh,
just public hearing.
oh, it's public hearing?
Yeah, we gotta vote.
All right.
You got it. You can do
Okay,
it.
we can do this. All right. I would entertain, if there's no further discussion, entertain a motion on this amendment.
I'll make a motion. I move to recommend approval of an amendment to City Code Chapter 11, Section 11.55, related to stormwater management as presented in the staff report dated August 8th, 2022.
All right, I have a motion from Commissioner Marcos. Do I have a
Second.
Second from Commissioner Kirk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone like to abstain? All right, I almost jinxed it, but I didn't, so. All right. Any planners report this evening?
Not tonight, thank you.
Any members' reports? I had one brief one. Someone complimented me on my quote in the Sun Sailor about the development at Top View and Valley View. So I went and looked at it. It was a really nice quote, but I realized that was actually Commissioner Farr because I wasn't at the meeting. So I have to give proper credit to you here. But so thank you for filling in and also making me look good too. So all right. If no other business tonight, I entertain a motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Nicely done.
Well done.
Always.
Well done.
Good job. Yeah.
Good job, guys.
Exhibited patience.
Nicely done.